Good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World. So, where do we start? How do you, we were talking about, you said you were feeling edgy this morning.
Really edgy. Anxious, edgy, hard to take a breath. What kept coming to me, I guess starting yesterday, is I've been feeling really connected to myself. And it felt amazing. And then yesterday, I just seemed to be grasping at like smoke, and I couldn't get that again. And then I was wondering if that was part of the edginess today, because I feel like I hadn't meditated in a year. I feel so disconnected and so alone and lost. I guess that's a good, that kind of sums up this morning.
And I was telling you before we got online that so I looked at a bunch of houses this weekend. We looked at 13 houses.
That's a lot. That's a big investment.
It is. But anyway, I woke up in the middle of the night on Saturday, and it was funny because I was really tired. I fell asleep early Saturday because it was over Saturday and Sunday. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was like what you're talking about, and antsy, and I was sad, and there was stuff coming up, and I'm just like, what's this about? And I realized I had also picked up some energy from the houses I'd been in, of the people who live there, because houses retain that energy. But of course, if there wasn't something in me to trigger,
Right.
there wouldn't have been anything to trigger.
Right.
So, and what's really interesting that keeps on coming to me, because then this morning I woke up at like 5 o'clock and I was laying there, and one of the houses that, oh, hi Ann, I see Ann joined us. One of the houses we looked at had the perfect space inside, right? And then the yard, it fell off on this bluff kind of thing, which was actually sort of pretty, right?
Right.
It needs some work to maybe do some terracing, for retainer, because they have they're like one of those black vinyl things. I mean, and they had this beautiful deck that overlooked this greenway and woods and stuff, but it fell down. It was quite steep in the back. For some reason, that bothered me so much, like something was falling away, right? I just felt like,
Oh, I feel that.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the house. I mean, the house felt great. Otherwise, it was just this, oh, why does this bother me so much, right?
Like sliding into
because
that.
all I could talk about, yeah, and that's all I could talk about when we were there. Is like, so we could find somebody to give us quotes on how much it would cost to terrace. Like I was like not even getting to the house part. I was so stuck on that just little piece right there. Because I'm like, oh, we could do this and do that, and we'd have to put steps in and then make another terrace where we could sit, because then you can overlook the greenway and all that kind of stuff, right? Whoa! I'm like, why would that even get me? So either usually it's with me, it's either yes or no. Like it's either
Right.
But the falling away of everything, and it's the back of the house. So think
Oh,
about it. The falling away of everything behind me, right? You want to talk about discomfort?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can feel everything you're saying. And it's like no looking back.
So there's nothing there.
Right. Or look back all you want, because there's nothing there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe it's funny because that's what just came to mind with the whole edginess, and it's like maybe and that's the same thing for me too, right? Because once we move from this house, they're taking the house down.
Right.
So there is no looking back once we're out of here, which is the same kind of feeling, and maybe that's why it bothered me.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely feels. I mean, and we've been talking so much about moving on, and the chaos bringing the change, and you've got to tear down to have new. And so, I mean, it fits perfect. Certainly feels congruent with what I've been feeling today. And maybe that's some of the alone feeling is, being the first one there,
Right.
or being the first one to remember that you're already there
Right.
feels lonely.
Well, and what I see when you say that is I see us standing like we like hiked up this mountain or whatever, and we're at this like whatever this cliff or this bluff, and we turn around to go back, and there's nothing there because it all fell away.
Wow.
Oh, that just feels really
Wow.
scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, automatically I want to say, be careful what path you go down, because that's the path you're going to stay down.
Your committed path, yeah. I mean, and you get
Right.
there. I mean, but the thing is, like, the thing for then like people freak out because then they're like, oh, I don't know what to decide to do, right?
Right.
Yeah, so you're yawning already.
Yeah.
But it's like the path will always get there. We'll always get there, but there's no backtracking anymore.
Right. Right.
It's like we're just committed to now and being present. And and that's what I noticed because it was like funny. Like we looked at houses all over this area, right? And we looked at houses nearby. We looked at houses, and houses are such a great. I mean, they're great personification because what are how like that's our body. Our body is our house, right? For our spirit while we're here, right?
Right.
So it's like, and it's also houses have to do with phases in our lives. They have to do with the representation of our life and all kinds of, and what's contained within our life. So what was interesting was I was very aware and observant to looking at all these houses, the 13 around the area, and there were some that were really nearby, and then there were some that were really in the middle of nowhere, right? And there were some that were in a completely different area of the triangle. Like, so it would be almost like just moving to a whole new place because it's
Right.
just a different geography. And I was very observant to the discomfort that I would feel about thinking about that, right? Because we get, and then I'm like, wow, I have far more of a comfort zone than I thought I did. That was left.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been Frank's work is really picking up in North Carolina, and it's like, it makes sense to be there. And I'm like, okay, I've lived there before. I could do that again. But then I started, it's like, I'm not sure I'd want to live in Raleigh, but I'm not sure I'd want to live out in, you know, east of Greenville.
Right.
And I just started thinking about it, and it's like, no, I'm just good right here, right where I'm comfortable.
Well, that's the whole thing. And I found, yeah, it's funny you say that. Because then coming home like Saturday, I noticed when we stepped up in my front stoop, I was like, you know,
Yeah, like, all good again.
yeah. And so the thing is, that's such a great, and it was such a great reflection for me, right? To say observant to that and to feel through that, flow through that discomfort. Because I was like, but that's the exciting part. That's the adventurous part, right? That's the part of like taking this step into what's next is letting go of everything behind us.
Right, right.
And
Whether
it's
it's
like,
whether they were things that served us or not, even.
yes, yeah. So there's like this constant. I mean, we have, and this is like even I've talked about this. That whole we have so many of this, so much of this, many of these things in our cracks and crevices, right? That we don't even realize. And of course, you're like, I've known this, and I've been looking at this for 3 years, right, or whatever.
Right, right.
Letting go of the house my kids grew up in, and that we've been here for 22 years, and I know that's an oddity for today. So like, it's for people to stay in the house for that long. So
Right.
it's like, so, and I'm ready, but there's obviously part of me that's a little bit breathless, right? Like you were saying a little breathless. So I'd be able to take a breath, right, before we started.
Right.
Um,
Well, and I don't know. I've been looking at things like, well, I could do this, but God, just thinking about the work involved in doing this, just like you were talking about, well, we could put stairs in a terrace and this and this, and it's
yeah,
like you just look at that work and go, that's almost overwhelming, and I could just stay where I am and not have that.
except I don't have that option. Right? I have to choose one
That's true.
or choose a
That's
different
true.
option. Choose a different option, right?
Right. Right. So somewhere in there, I feel I have a belief that doing something different than what I'm doing is going to be harder. I feel that.
Because in
That
the past, we've allowed it to be.
well, and we've worked hard to get to a place to make this easy. So of
Yes.
course, stepping away from that, we believe we'd have to go through that same process again.
Yeah.
So why would we have chosen this if there was something even easier?
Well, and there is. We just are
There
figuring
is.
that
We just haven't
out.
remembered. Well, this feels big.
Yeah, it does. Feels like very edgy, like wanting to shift
Yeah,
your seat a lot.
yeah,
Like, what do
yeah.
you mean?
Just like
What
I
do
don't
you
want
mean?
to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Like, okay, okay, let's be done. We move on to something
There's got
else.
to be something else we can talk about.
Yeah, and it was really funny too that, like, as I was telling you before we got on, it's like literally 5 minutes before we got on, I got an email from our attorneys with the first offer from the DOT, which is like sort of like making it real now, right? So it's
Yeah,
really funny because I was even asking myself, well, we haven't gotten the offer yet, package offer yet, so like, why am I looking at houses yet? And we look, but yet I was guided to look at all these houses, of course, right? And then it's like, oh, Monday morning, here you go, and I'm like, just to make me squirm a little bit more.
right, right, right.
So, so the thing that I have been looking at, because that's been my reflection, the way it's been able to reflect back to me, right, has been what is it? So, like, what if we look at houses, right, as representations of our lives? The houses that I was looking at is like we got to the point. My husband and I got to the point of really, what is it that's going to serve me and us? Like, what is it really that I'm really going to enjoy? Not for all the things that I used to have to look for in a house, right? But what is really going to allow me to be authentically me? Like what
Right,
would be, right?
right.
And
Which
that
is
was the real comforting,
that
nourishing
is
part of it.
that is where I've been focusing 99% of my energy starting last week is the authentically me. Everything. What I eat, what I wear, my actions during the day, my thoughts. And I found myself just falling in love with everything. And it was tremendous. And then this set in and it was like, okay, so how does that fit into that? How does this
Yeah,
fit in?
well, it's because all of a sudden the ego wakes up and goes, "Whoa, wait a second.
Oh,
We're letting go of all that other stuff by like really immersing ourselves in this, right? But what about like because it wants to go, but what about this? I think that's
exactly.
the edginess, right?
Yeah.
And if you got it all falling away, because I just feel like, whoa, if I turn off my thing, obviously my phone. The I turn off my phone. The important thing, yeah, and I know we talk about this a lot, but so let's just look at this because I'll look at some of the stuff I was looking at. I don't have to look for a house for my kids anymore. I don't
Right.
have to look for a house for my family anymore, right? It's what do I want from a house? Like what is it that's really going to make me happy? So yeah, I
Right.
have my older kids living at home temporarily for a little while, maybe for the next couple of years. So we have to accommodate in that kind of space. But ultimately, what I had to look at is really what's going to allow me to be authentically me
Right.
over all of that. Like, where do I feel really comfortable in this house? Like, there are houses that we looked at that fit the checkoff list, and I just was like, nope,
Yeah. Right.
because there was something about it that just didn't jive with me. It was just not. It didn't serve me. It would serve the others in the house more so than me. And I'm like, no, not ready for, not going to do that anymore, right? So And there's a way to find it. And it was like, well, and I had to tell myself, well, I can find a house that has all of it that actually really attends to me and everybody who's going to be living in it, even if it's temporarily, right? And then it was funny that once I was able to do that, it was very clear which houses I wanted to look at. It was like bing, bing, you know, it was just like those just pop up to the surface. So it's everything in our life is it's we do make all these choices, and that's what I've been looking at. So this morning is everything we do, all these choices we make so often are because it's like, oh well, I want to make so and so happy, right? Or
Right.
I want to make them comfortable, and I want to let them have what they want, and then we don't even realize that that's a sacrifice in itself. Like saying it's okay for them to have what they want, and it's okay for me to get what I want, and
Right.
make that a priority.
Right.
So, you know, and these are very little but very important things. Like we do that all the time. Like where do you want to go to eat? Where do you want to go to the movies? Do you
Oh
want what do
yeah.
you want to see? Where do you want to go? Blah blah blah. And a lot of times we'll be like, oh, and what do we think? Very subtle. Oh, I just don't want to have that argument. It'll
Right.
make me happy, and it's not that bad. I'll be okay,
Right.
right? And
Yep.
so it's like this other step, but there's something else in here that's really big because I can feel the ground rumbling underneath, right? That we haven't addressed yet.
Yeah.
It's maybe that commitment because as soon as we make that commitment, everything else falls away. Like that whole feeling of the back, everything behind me falling away.
Right. Right.
No, let's terrace it and slow it down.
Can't put the stairs in.
At least a slip and slide, please.
Right.
Oh God. Yeah. So
Well, and we base so much of our behavior on conditioning from the past. And that it almost is like we rely on that to propel us forward. And we rely on that to give us our doing. Oh,
mhm.
if you take all that away, it almost, we've been focused on the importance of, at this point, of just being.
Mhm.
So if we take away our catalysts for doing, it has to come from a whole new place.
Right, and that's what we're learning. I mean, I even I put this morning, I posted on Facebook. I had to think a minute about what it said. It was this really cool meme, and it said, instead of making a to-do list, I've decided to make a to-be list and what I'm going
Yeah,
to be today. Which I was like, I love that. That's perfect. It's like I'm going to be happy, like I'm happy and
right,
authentic and prosperous and healthy and whatever. We can choose what I am being, right?
right,
And the doing then just becomes inconsequential because everything will automatically, when we allow it to, it will just automatically align.
right.
Um,
Well, maybe that's the discomfort is, it was okay when we were choosing this or this, but once all that past, all that behind us falls away, there goes our choice.
well, think about this, right? Because we still delineate. Oh God, now I'm just getting this download. We still delineate importance and identity through our past, right?
Right,
So something that's been coming up a lot in conversation in the past couple of weeks is whether or not, like, so I'm rewriting my website, right? And so, like, whether or not to put certain backstory in because I find it unimportant, right? And yet I
right,
have other people who tell me, oh, well, how come you never talk about this? Like, we'll have something will come up in conversation, and I'll say, oh, yeah, well, this happened once about, and they're like, why don't you ever tell people about that? Because, like, and I'm like, why? It doesn't make me any better or worse.
right,
It was just my experience. And yes, I understand that some people, many people, not some, but many still think that you can only understand me if we've gone through the same thing, right? So that's how
yep,
I'm going to seek out someone, which I understand in our line of work is somewhat important to some people. except I don't find it important. So then why do I need to drag the story up? Why do I need to keep that behind me, right, in this present?
Right.
Because when I come to the table, how can I help you change the foundation of your reality, right, to being the authentic divine individual that you are, if I still not allowing us to be equal because we have no difference except for our filters of separate identities and our on our journeys, right? So if we get to that core of being divine and infinite in our creation, and without the story,
Right.
the ego goes, what, right?
As you're talking, I sat there and I could see how the stories and everything we built behind us, our past or whatever, makes us so flat and so non-dimensional. Whereas once we cut those ties, it's the possibilities are infinite.
Right. And it's funny
But we
because
think it's the opposite.
it's the opposite of what the ego thinks, because the ego
Right.
thinks that's that past and history that makes us colorful, right?
Right.
But then it's only colorful on a flat surface,
Yep.
essentially. Oh yeah, that's big. That's a big shift, right? To saying to saying, okay, for me to be present, right? To not have my story, to not say, because a lot of us, like conversations I had last week, a lot of us are in this process of recreating ourselves, right? Because it's a constant recreation and we're changing and shifting so quickly, right? So the conversation is then, what's my foundation? Like, what is my foundation of what I provide, right? And it
Right.
took me a long time of constantly asking for clarity and to remember, like, how to be what I provide, even if I don't yet remember what that is. And when I started doing that, it suddenly just went bam, like into my consciousness one day. And I was like, oh, well, that was so easy and came to me in such a different way than I've ever had that, come before. Then it was like, oh, well, not everything else aligns with that. That's really easy. So, and I know a lot of others who are in the middle of, including you, trying to, like, right, trying to like remember, or not trying, allowing, coming to the place of remembering it. And what I feel like is the only way, not the only way, the easiest, the most complete way for us to do that is to let go of all of that backstory
Right.
and to say, okay, because with our backstory, we limit ourselves. That's the thing. We don't realize we limit ourselves by saying, okay, because I can only talk to people who connect with that backstory, right?
Right.
And it's saying, well, what if I just am here and being and
Right. And
all.
I know in the past we've talked about how just being the vibration that others can connect to
Mm-hmm.
is enough to attract them. But they also have to be in a place where they don't allow the stories to distract them from the vibration. So if you leave out the stories, they have to remember how to connect to that vibration, which is a growth step for them in any way.
Yes. Yes. Well, and then, yeah, it pushes us into connecting via vibration instead of words.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And instead of, oh, well, I have this in common with you, so that's where we'll begin, which that used to work. That used to be how this whole thing fit
That's,
together.
well, it's how we got it started, I think. Right.
Yeah,
So,
right,
mhm.
right. And now this is almost like a graduation
Yes.
to a new level of
Right.
connectivity
Because
via
we don't have to have that journey resonance
right,
to resonate to continue to what's next.
right.
And that's so freeing. That feels so free. And yet at the same time, the ego is really uncomfortable with that. It's a little
Right,
too.
right. Like I've given you a lot of room here, but this is taking it a little too
Yeah.
far.
I don't know, I'm a little uncomfortable with this, right?
We need to talk about this.
We'll talk about this later.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
when you're offline.
Right. Offline.
but
Yeah.
oh, but the thing is, it just adds us like it's like going from like the third dimension to the seventh dimension in one step
Right.
because
Right.
it's adding all of this dimensionality that we've excluded from ourselves before, right? Part of why we have said, oh, we have to get to this dimension, we have to get to this level of consciousness, when it's really, no, we have to let go of our limitation of having to stay within these certain dimensions or this part
Right.
of our existence.
Right.
And wow, that's really easy, but very powerful shift.
Yeah.
Like my whole body is tingling.
Yep. I, I'm quite quivery inside.
So, so now I'm going to take a deep breath.
I would take a deep breath.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just all I can do is sit here for a minute and breathe. And that's really, it's been interesting because, so like, and I look at this now from this perspective of, what I've been rewriting my website. I've had to rewrite my website for years. And every time I went to rewrite my website, I'd end up getting pulled back into the administration of Trinity and like, stuff that I had to do on that side. And it was like it pulled me away from myself
Right.
because it was still like having to like, and yeah, it still needs to be managed, but it's still a managed, it's part, but instead of what I think was happening was I had gotten to the point where Trinity was like what I was identifying with, and then all the other stuff fit into Trinity. And now I
Right.
realize that, no, it's me to identify with in my presence, and that Trinity stuff just fits into me,
Right.
because it's part of that, which changes the energy completely, right? It
It
makes
really does.
a completely different way of being, because then it becomes a much, I don't want to say smaller or less important, because it's not, it's just equally as important as all these other aspects and being and whatever that just all fit
Mhm.
together. Which is why when I finally just backed up and just said, okay, let me just be this, let me be my authenticity and remember what that is. It's sort of like putting the cart before the horse, right? Like
Well, that's what we think. Right.
that's what we think, right? So it's like the more I would focus on being it, then all of a sudden it would be like, oh, here, this is what this is. Oh wait, this is what this means. Oh wait, this is what this would look like, and it's like, oh, so much easier.
Yeah. Right.
Because then I'm not fighting different parts of me anymore. It's just like, nope, this is all just a part of the being right now. And we are I want to say untrained, but that's not the word. We're not in the habit of doing that way,
Yeah. We're unpracticed.
because it's still going to that place of doing to be, right? What do I need to do to be this? Instead of how is it for me to be and allow myself to allow for this to be, you know,
Right.
and that sort of gives us all I kept on seeing myself all this weekend, the houses and everything else, was just allow all possibility. Like, look at all possibilities.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
simple.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, and by the way, that whole, like I said, that one house with that the bluff behind it, that was just really fun. It's not even a huge one. It's just, big enough. And I was just thinking, wow, and I've talked about wanting to like live in a Big Sur. You want to talk about bluffs? Live along the coastline over on the West Coast. That would be pretty incredible. But so I think maybe for us today is that all of that, right? The being.
What? Yeah. And whatever's needed to be remembered to allow that to flow to
in its entirety.
yeah, right,
Entirety.
right.
Not bits and pieces anymore, you know?
Piece, right,
Like to say, I surrender to my beingness, to my beingness and that authenticity
right.
and realization, and I allow all the possibility to manifest, right? So it sounds like words we've used before, but it's a completely different energy.
Well, it's a whole different basis, right?
Wow, I can feel that. That feels really good.
Yeah,
And it's like
definitely.
no hiding from ourselves anymore.
No kidding. No kidding. Well, and no hiding from who we, no more pretending of who we thought we were with all that gone, all the past gone.
And in that comes like look at all of the, it's interesting. Oh my god. What I've also looked at, so this month is Pride Month right across the country.
Right.
And North Carolina finally got on the bandwagon because for some reason they had a Pride Month in like I think it was September in the past, and this year they finally were like, wait a second, everybody else like celebrates in June, like why are we not celebrating in June? So now they're finally on the bandwagon, which is cool. But because I just reminded me yesterday because I was driving through a town where they had the rainbow flags out, and I thought, oh, that's cool to finally see that here, right?
Right.
Um, so the thing that has been really interesting is I was thinking about this in the car when I was looking at that is like it's great that we're coming to this place of saying, well, this is who I am and I'm proud of it and I'm okay with not even proud of it, I'm just okay with it. And I don't care whether you're okay with it or not, I am who
Right.
I am, right? And that's been a big one, right? The whole LBTGQC community, like all
Right.
their initials. But really is the way I look at it is that all that authenticity to say, I really am figuring out who I am, right? And then the key is so it's great to get to that point. And women too, right? Women, the whole Me Too thing and what's standing to the so it's all these inequalities that have been like closeted in the past or held down in the past. We've let us hold us down in the past. That we're finally coming to the forefront and saying, yeah, no, I stand in this and I stand in this in power. And then the key that I keep on telling a lot of people is the next step. Like what we keep on doing is like we get to this one point and then we think that's enough, right?
Right.
So then the key is to go beyond that and say, I am this and so much more, right?
Right.
This is like not losing your identity to a categorization because it's just creating more separation then, right? And so what I say is say, yeah, okay, so that's part of me, as well as a whole bunch of other things. Like it's not like having to be my identity. And I think that's another step for us to take. You know what I'm saying? Like,
It's not just letting go to get to the next place that you're comfortable.
right.
It's like, no, just really letting go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always say, don't let even that those parts of you that are you're finally letting come out to light, which you're happy and it's like a relief to be able to say, okay, but don't let that then start to hold you back and define you and limit you from the wholeness of what you are, well beyond just that,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah. Don't trade one limitation for a bigger limitation.
Which is what we've
Or
done in the past. Yeah,
oh,
I mean
absolutely.
that's what we've done in the past, and we shift from one thing to another, whether it's religion or gender or gender preference or sexual orientation or um, political beliefs or like I mean, there's so many designations that we put on ourselves to say those are only small, tiny pixels of the big picture.
Right.
And that's the authentic being. Right? And by the way, all those pixels change as I allow them to, as I create them differently. If I create them differently, or they stay the same as my choice, and that's fine. But when I don't let it define me, I can allow all possibility. Like I can allow all possibility I might not like consider.
Right.
So there's some element to that that's really important too.
Right. Yeah, because that's the basis of how we define our freedoms.
Yes. You know, it was funny. I was talking to somebody. I don't remember who it was. Maybe, maybe not. I've talked about this multiple times. Where our generation straddled this line of going from traditional to a completely new world, right?
Right.
And in many cases, like it was the first generation that really did have a lot of the liberties of, like, say, like coming out of the closet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of women going to college and going to work and choosing that as their what they want to do, of equality of all kinds. It's been amazing to think that's just happened in just the past 40 years, right?
Right. Right.
So, I was talking to somebody about that, and I said, the thing is, when I was coming up, when I first joined corporate, right, I worked in a real man's world, and
Oh
I
yeah.
worked in, and yeah, yeah, and you too, I know, worked in a Wall Street firm about like a man's world in the 80s. You want to talk about that?
Right.
And a man's world and a man's world. And the thing that I had said was, I had a very successful corporate career. And I've talked about this multiple times with different people. That's sort of coming together. And part of it was because, yes, I recognized and observed the inequalities and um, what's the word? The exclusions, the biases. That's the word. The biases that I would come across. Um, and I would observe them, and I would say, I see it, but I don't need to accept it. That's not who I am.
Right.
And
Right.
I always feel, if I gave one single attribute that I wasn't even conscious I was doing at the time, but now that I look back, I think that's the one thing that got me promoted time and time again, because I never sat and listened to what other people told me I was supposed to be thinking, right?
Right.
Or feeling or angry about or whatever. And yeah, I would get angry about some things and frustrated, but when I got angry, I used it, and I would be like, yeah, nope, this is the way it's going to go for me, or I'm going to go someplace else.
Right.
And I made myself valuable, but I was also then dedicated to my worth, right? And I was very, solid in my worth to say, okay, well, if you're not going to do this for me, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go someplace else. And then someplace else will appreciate me because I appreciate myself. And that is getting beyond, like, you know, that's getting beyond saying, well, why, like for me, I'm a woman, and like there's this inequality and da da da. And yeah, I recognized that was going on, but then it's like, yeah, except I don't believe it. So
Right.
therefore, I'm going to find a place. Yes, I'm not going to accept it as my reality. So I'm just going to go to some place where I'm going to keep on feeling it out until I find that place where, it supports me and that reality. And I did. And that's the key, I think, for us, is to stop allowing ourselves to believe what everybody else is telling you. I mean, and it's not that we don't have them, the biases and stuff. And yes, we absolutely so important to address them. But the place to address them first is within ourselves, to say, hey, I'm worthy. You can
Right.
say whatever you want. It has nothing to do with me. It only has to do with who you are, and I can just move on my merry way, and yet, create exactly the reality that I'm ready to create.
Right.
And that goes along with this being beyond doing, because it also goes with being beyond identity, right? That past identity, or the history, or oh, how many generations of women had to fight this, or how many, And I'm
Right.
not judging that. I'm just saying we really have lost ourselves in that rhetoric. I'm just saying.
Right.
And I'm not just saying for women. I'm talking about all kinds of groups, whether it's, the LGBTQV group, whether it's, some race or religion or gender, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Because we talk about things still that happened hundreds or thousands of years ago that we carry forward with us into every step.
Right.
But what if we let go of that to say, yeah, I see that, I honor it, I thank it for what it gave to us in terms of experience, and now I'm letting it go because it doesn't define me, and I am an infinite, eternal being that has no gender, race, sexual orientation, but
Right.
gender
No.
or anything. No, no, yeah. My divine being is none of that. It's well beyond that.
Right.
It's all of it and none of it, and well beyond that.
Right.
And that's the place for us to start to live. Yeah, that something about that feels really good too.
Yeah. Well, it's freedom like we never imagined.
Well, and we weren't even conscious that we were missing it, right?
Right. Right.
But I can feel that in the cells. Like there's like the breath is coming easier now.
Oh yeah. Much easier. Much easier.
So yeah, and then many will ask, well, so then how do I do then how do you do that? How do you break past those limitations and the exclusions and the biases? And it's like, well, really, it starts where? It always starts within ourselves, because then it doesn't matter what anybody's doing around us or saying,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is really big. This like is much bigger than a bread box, because I can sort of see the
Right.
implications in this big
Right.
ripple
Right.
effect.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not dropping a pebble in a pond. It's dropping a meteor in a pond.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Getting some good waves.
Yeah. And the thing also, like, it's interesting. Yeah, and that's funny because I was guided to, like, there was a bunch of stuff I posted this morning, and it was like, oh, Bing, that's really good. That's really good. That's really And it was all about this individuality, this, you know, standing in our authenticity, this being, not stand, but just being, right?
Right.
Even, like there was a thing I posted about, like, daughters, it's time for us to stop. I can't remember what it was. It was about, like,
Oh,
stop,
raising to be married.
yes, stop raising them to be married,
Yep.
raising them to be self-sufficient and self-loving and stuff. So
Yep.
much. I mean, these are so subtle, and yet we have them so embedded in all these habits. And that again is the detraction of doing, right? Because the habits are the doing part,
Right.
right? So when
Right.
we're being, to say it doesn't matter, male, female, black, white, orange, human, non-human,
Right.
um,
Right.
or whatever, it doesn't matter because we're all the same. And when we are being at that foundation, it allows us to do from a completely different place. Yeah, I see how that circles around.
Right.
All right, well, I think we have our thing.
Right. We have our vibration.
Hey, we do. So let's go and do that, shall we?
Yes.
Well, not do. Let's go and be that, shall we?
Yeah. There you go.
There was a lot of resistance
Yeah.
because my mind wanted to go, but what about this? What this? What this? What this? I kept on hearing was all of it.
Right. Right. I finally got to a point where I was really out there, and all of a sudden I was like, "Oh my God, how long have we been out there?"
But then at some point it was funny because everything contracted in, right? But then it was like a supernova thing. It like contracted in, and then it went sort of released. So it got really tight for a little bit. Because it was, and all the what about this? Yeah, it was my stuff, but it was also like I could hear so many voices. Like, what about this? What about this? What about this? Like
Right.
so many voices up there. And then it was just like this contraction of like it's almost like we had to bring it all together like a putty ball or something, right? So bring it all
Right.
together. And then exploded into its supernova that it deserves to be. So that felt really, and then after that, it just felt really like rippling, like very opening and expansive. That was nice.
Yeah.
Much deeper breaths now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Much better.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. See how this week pans out. That feels wonderful. What a great way to start the week.
I know.
Just set ourselves to on the course of being that authenticity and letting everything flow from the being. Make your list of things to be.
All right.
All right, great. Thank you. We'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter and
There's Sieg Evignoni.
signing off on the Abundant Wealth.